The Mary Celeste, An Unsolved Mystery from History by Jane Yolen and Heidi Elizabeth Yolen Stempel. Illustrated by Roger Roth. When I grow up, I want to be a detective, just like my dad. He says I was born curious, which is just what a detective needs to be. What I'm most curious about now is my father's file of old mysteries that have never been solved. They have baffled people for years. Dad calls these cases open, but I call them history mysteries, and I am determined to figure them out. For each mystery, I read as much as I can about it. I keep a notebook in which I highlight the most important clues. Sometimes I draw a map and a timeline, and I always keep a list of important words that are special to the case to help me understand what has happened. The Mary Celeste is about a ship whose crew disappeared when they were on the high seas more than 120 years ago. The crew was never found. Though lots of people have ideas or theories about what might have happened, no one is sure. But Dad says no mystery is impossible to solve as long as you have enough clues. This is how the story goes. A brisk December wind filled the great sails of the Dei Gracia. She had left New York on November 15, 1872, to cross the cold Atlantic with a cargo of petroleum. It was a long trip, many days on an empty ocean, and nothing to look at but the thin line between sea and sky. Early in the afternoon of December 4th, December 5th in sea time, Seaman John Johnson, alert at the wheel, spotted a smudge on the horizon. He called out excitedly, "Captain Morehouse, sir! There is something coming toward us off the port bow." Captain Morehouse looked through his spyglass. Even though the smudge was miles away, he could tell it was a ship heading in their direction. But as she came closer, he saw that the ship moved slowly, oddly, running aimlessly before the wind. Only 3 sails were still set. 2 had been blown away, and 1 was lying loose. The rest of the sails were furled. Several of the Dei Gracia's crew gathered at the rail to watch the oncoming brig. They all knew something was wrong. "Get me Mr. DeVoe," ordered the captain. A seaman went below deck to rouse the first mate from his berth. By the time DeVoe joined the captain, the other ship was near. "Look," Morehouse said, handing the mate the spyglass. DeVoe looked and saw no one on deck. "But," he said, "they fly no flag of distress. Perhaps they lie drunken below." At the wheel, Johnson laughed. "They wouldn't if they had a captain like ours." Captain Morehouse laughed too, then said, "Let us hail them." They ran up the flags that offered help. Minutes went by, and they got no reply. When they sailed closer still, the captain called out through his speaking trumpet. He was greeted by a strange silence. Some people believed the Mary Celeste... Oops, I'm not going to read that part. Hi, Wind Group, I'm not going to read that part. "Something is definitely amiss," the captain said. "Someone must go over and see." So a small boat was lowered. 3 of the sailors, DeVoe, Johnson, and second mate John Wright, rowed across to the silent brig. The ship was a bit over 100 feet in length, with an ornamental scroll on her bow. "What's she called?" asked Johnson. He was pulling on the oars and so could not see. "The Mary Celeste out of New York," said DeVoe, reading the name on her stern. The only sounds were their own voices and the slip-slap of the waves. From the Mary Celeste, there was silence. DeVoe and Wright climbed on board, leaving Johnson behind. Slowly they searched from bow to stern, but there was no one up on the deck, not even at the ship's wheel. The wheel was neither damaged nor lashed to a single course. The lifeboat that should have been lying across the main hatch was missing. Wright and DeVoe checked the ship's pumps, which turned out to be in good working order. And besides, there was little water in the hold. Mutiny? Whispered Wright, as if afraid to say the word aloud. Or a fever ship? Maybe pirates, DeVoe whispered back. Let's go on. The captain's cabin sat neat and ship-shape, except that the bed had not yet been made. The print of a small body was on the covers, and several toys lay scattered on the floor. An old dress hung near the bed, some India rubber overshoes standing under it. In the water closet sat a bag of dirty clothing. A rosewood harmonium stood silent against one wall. Above it, a shelf of music books. The captain of the Mary Celeste had brought his family with him and many of the comforts of home. In the first mate's cabin, the ship's log lay open. The last entry dated 8 o'clock a.m., November 25th. No trouble had been noted up to that time. But some important items were missing from the Mary Celeste. "Where's the chronometer?" asked Wright. DeVoe added, "And where are the sextant, navigation book, and ship's register?" They both knew a ship would never sail without these. Had the captain taken them with him when he left? Then why had the family not taken their clothes, or the captain's wife her jewelry? The two men asked themselves these questions. There was nothing to eat or drink in the captain's cabin, so the sailors checked in the ship's galley and pantry. There they found a 6-month supply of uncooked food and fresh water. They checked the crew's quarters, which were in good order, except that there was no crew anywhere to be found. The last place the men looked was in the ship's hold, where her cargo, 1,700 barrels of raw alcohol, was well stowed. Not a single barrel had been opened. All in all, DeVoe and Wright looked around the Mary Celeste for over half an hour. They found no sign of anyone on board, no signs of struggle. The men did not speak as they rowed back, but once on board the Dei Gracia, they had much to say. The captain listened sadly to their report, for he knew Captain Briggs and his wife Sarah. He had even had dinner with them at the Astor House before they sailed. They had told him their 2-year-old daughter Sophia was traveling with them, but their 7-year-old son Arthur had been left behind to go to school. Captain Morehouse knew that Captain Briggs was a good sailor, a smart master, and fair to his crew. The men's oilskins, boots, and pipes were all left behind. The lady left her gold lockets. "They went quickly, sir," said DeVoe. "I do not think they meant to be gone for good." Then he added, "I propose we bring the Mary Celeste in for salvage. Now, by the laws of the sea, she belongs to us." Captain Morehouse thought about salvaging the boat. "It will be dangerous for both ships. Our crew is small. I cannot spare more than 3 men." DeVoe nodded. "I can manage, sir," he said. DeVoe took only 2 sailors, a small boat, a barometer, a compass, and a watch, and rowed back across to the silent ship. It took them several days to make the Mary Celeste seaworthy again, pumping out the small amount of water and fixing the sails and masts. Then they sailed her to Gibraltar, where Captain Morehouse and his crew had to defend their rights to the ship at a long and difficult salvage trial. That trial was big news, reported in all the penny papers of the day. The newsboys on the streets called out the latest gossip. "Bloody sword found on Mary Celeste! Planks and splinters from a fight! Half-eaten breakfast still on the table! 13 missing from cursed ship!" Readers thrilled to these stories, but some were half-truths and some were downright lies. The only people who knew what really happened on the Mary Celeste after the last log entry had been written were the 10 people on board. They could have told the real story if they had ever been found. They never were.